Hi there, I'm Lily and welcome to this tutorial on the GAMSAT Section 1 Cartoons. So for this tutorial we have two lesson aims. So firstly we'll look at how to develop an approach to answering questions on cartoons, and then we'll have a go at some sample questions. So how do I approach cartoon questions? So cartoons require you to understand a combination of verbal and pictorial information that's conveyed by a cartoon. There's various things that you're going to need to look out for when presented with a cartoon, and we'll go through some of these. So firstly, the color. So think about what colors are used, if there's any repetition, and what these colors might mean. So for example, there might be a theme of greens and browns, and this might suggest earth. Or these could actually change the tone. So they might be using warm colors, such as red, orange, and yellow, or cold colors. Also know if it's in black and white, because this can also have different meanings. Then think about the size. So is there anything disproportioned? So either exaggerated or under-exaggerated, and think about the meaning of this and the effect it has when you look at the cartoon. And speech bubbles. So definitely read any of the speech bubbles and look at who is speaking and what they're saying, and maybe why they're saying it. And also take note if it's a conversation between two characters within the text. Symbols. So what symbols are used and why do you think these are used? The angle can also give you a clue as to the meaning behind the cartoon. So thinking about whether it's sloping up or sloping down, if it's from behind or if it's front on. So for example, if we have an angle that's sloping upwards, this could suggest that the context of the cartoon is powerful or dominant because we're looking at it from a position from below. Next, think about the tone. So what is the illustrator's attitude? So is he agreeing with the cartoon? Is he not agreeing with the cartoon? Is he maybe mocking it? And yeah, so just think about this. This is very important for interpreting the meaning of a cartoon. Facial expressions can be a great clue as to what the cartoon means. So look at what the facial expressions are, look at if they change, and make sure to compare different characters' expressions if there's more than one person within the cartoon. And labeling. So if there's anything labeled, take note of this, definitely read the labels, because this will also give you a clue as to the meaning of the cartoon. And then the focus. So what's in the foreground, background, or what's in focus? So again, this can be defined by the size of an object. So it might be more in focus in the foreground if the size has been exaggerated. So with all of these in mind, I think it's time to have a go at some sample questions. So remember to look at the cartoon, try to interpret the tone, the illustrator's attitude, any of the characters, their facial expressions, and definitely read any speech or labels. So if you'd like to pause the video and have a go at question 1. So we're presented with this cartoon, and if we have a look, there are many figures within it. So on the left, we have a group of people that appear to be angry, so that's judging by their facial expressions. We can then read their signs, and we see reopen now, I need a tattoo now, I want to get my hair done, the pandemic is a hoax. So we can now interpret as to why they're angry, and it's because they wish for the economy and retail industries to be opened up again. If we look on the right, we see a healthcare worker who is clearly masked. She's wearing PPE and she holds a sign saying "see you soon." And her tone and appearance is quite expressionless. So we obviously can't see her mouth because of the mask, but her eyes are quite flat and she may be a little bit apathetical, but she doesn't seem to be responding to their anger anyway. And her meaning of "see you soon" is because she expects to see them in hospital. So now with that in mind, we can look at the first question. So what is the purpose of the cartoon? So from all the things that we've been saying, we kind of have an idea of the purpose of the cartoon, so then we can look through the answer options. So option A, raise awareness for the inefficacies of the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. So these signs and the text involved has nothing to do with the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's just simply that they want the public areas to be opened up again. So for that reason, we can rule out option A. Moving on to option B, educate the public on the lies that they have been told about COVID-19. So this is definitely not the case. If we look at the signs that they're holding, although they might appear to be angry, and we might assume that maybe, yeah, they feel that they've been lied to, that's not the case. They're saying things such as, I need a tattoo now, I want to get my hair done. So they're just angry purely because they want the place to be opened up again. So we can rule out option B. Option C, raise awareness on the conflicting positions between the healthcare staff and the public on the severity of COVID-19. So whilst this does raise awareness on the conflicting positions, because we see obviously the healthcare staff do not believe that we're in a position that we can open up again, because it will result in a higher amount of cases, then more hospital admissions. So we can see conflicting opinions, but it's not exactly the purpose of the cartoon. So we can rule out option C. Option D, educate the public on the belief amongst healthcare staff that caving to public demands would lead to a resurgence in cases. So this is much more likely than option C, because clearly we're seeing that from the healthcare's point of view, it's that if we did reopen, it will result in more hospital admissions. So this is kind of how we interpreted the cartoon at the beginning. So option D is looking very likely. And option D is the correct answer to question 1. So time for a GAMSAT top tip. So when asked about the purpose of a cartoon, you need to interpret the context. So looking at the text and the facial expressions will help you to understand the issue represented. So in question 1, the crowd appeared to be very angry. However, the text and their signs allowed us to rule out the reason of their anger, and it ruled out the fact that one of the answer options said that they felt they had been lied to. So always pay attention to facial expressions and text. Moving on to question 2. Again, if you'd like to pause the video at this point and have a go at answering question 2. Question 2 asks, what is most likely to be the author's perception of the general public? So already from just interpreting the cartoon, we get the feeling that he's mocking the public. So the way that he's portrayed them to be very angry, and the text he's used on the signs all represent menial tasks and quite trivial tasks, so such as tattoos, getting your hair done. So he's definitely mocking them, and we get the sense that he does not agree with them. So now if we look at the options, so option A, the author is in support of the general public, eager for the restrictions to lift. So that goes against what we've just said. Because he is using such menial and trivial tasks, he definitely does not agree with the public, and we can rule out option A. Option B says the author is likely a healthcare worker and stands with healthcare staff in the view that the restrictions should be lifted. So the first part of this option B, the author is likely a healthcare worker, that's a possibility, we don't know that, but the second part of it is definitely not true. So he does not stand with the healthcare staff's view that restrictions should be lifted. So the healthcare staff member in this cartoon is saying, see you soon. So what she means by that is that if we did reopen, it would result in more hospital cases. So we can conclude that she is against reopening. So we can rule out option B. Option C, the author views the general public negatively. So as we've said, he's definitely attempting to mock the public and does not agree with them. So this can also be said that he's viewing them as negatively. So option C is looking quite likely. Option D, the author pities the general public, viewing them to be victims of unfair treatment. This is also definitely not the case. So just by judging, again, as we said, what they're wanting is tattoos and getting their hair done, both of which are not immediate tasks or in any way overly important to a person's well-being. So we can rule out option D. It would be different if he mentioned important tasks, such as maybe, seeing family members, or if maybe their business has been closed down, their own business. Whereas he's purposely picked these tasks because they are things that we can forgo for the greater good, so that everyone else can be protected from COVID. So for these reasons, option C is the correct answer to question 2. Now moving on to question 3. Again, if you'd like to pause the video at this point and have a go at answering question 3. So question 3 is asking, what is the tone of this cartoon? So again, we've kind of taken the time already to interpret this cartoon, so we can go straight to the answer options. So A, hostile towards the government. So whilst the tone here of these characters may be interpreted as they are being hostile towards the government, the overall picture, so we need to take into account the whole cartoon. And this is definitely, if we incorporate the healthcare worker as well, it's not hostility towards the government. This is simply to do with how if we did reopen, it would result in more hospital admissions. So we can rule out option A. Option B, mocking of the general public. So again, when we take into account the healthcare worker on the right, as well as the crowd on the left, we can definitely see that there is a sense of mocking. So by painting them out to care more about getting their hair done than potentially being admitted to hospital, he's definitely making fun of them. So we'll leave option B as a possibility. Option C, mocking of the healthcare staff. So that's the opposite to what we've just said. The healthcare staff are appearing quite expressionless and they're not being mocked, they're just simply saying, see you soon. So option C is incorrect. Option D, hostile towards the healthcare staff. So be careful because you may interpret that the crowd is being hostile towards the healthcare staff, but that is not the tone of this cartoon as a whole. So we can rule out option D, but just be careful not to fall into that trap of thinking that you need to interpret a specific part of it. This is the cartoon as a whole. So we can rule out option D. And therefore option B is the correct answer to question 3. Now, time for a GAMSAT top tip. So question 3, the question that we just did, asked about the tone of the cartoon. So similarly to question 1, the text on the signs and the appearance of the characters helped us to interpret the tone. So the author had illustrated the crowd in a negative light, and the crowd were enraged and included trivial tasks such as getting a tattoo or getting their hair done on their signs. And this starkly contrasted with the healthcare worker who appeared expressionless and with a simple message. So the author is clearly attempting to mock the crowd with their inessential needs. Now moving on to question 4. Again, if you'd like to pause the video and have a go at answering question 4 and then resume it and we'll go through the solutions. So question 4, consider the number of people in this cartoon. Which of the following describes the effect of the number of people drawn? So we've already looked at this cartoon and we've said that there's obviously a crowd of 4 people versus the singular healthcare worker. So with that in mind, we'll have a look at the answer options. So A, the healthcare staff are shown to be in minimal numbers. They are being heard more than the public though, as they are posing a more convincing argument. So option A, the healthcare worker isn't seen to be actually posing an argument. She is simply standing there and saying, see you soon. So whilst she is being shown to be in minimal numbers, there's also nothing to do with who the government is listening to more. So we can rule out option A. Option B, the pressure of the public is being shown to be greater than that from the healthcare staff due to drawing more of them, which shows the government are listening to the public. So actually, if we look at the signs though, the public aren't actually getting what they want. So they are still demanding that they want it to reopen, but we don't actually know what the situation is right now, whether it is going to reopen, whether it's not. So we don't actually know who is being listened to more. So we can rule out option B. Option C, the single healthcare worker versus the high number of members of the public creates a sense of the healthcare staff being outnumbered by the public. So this is definitely a very fair interpretation. So obviously it is basically 1 person against 4 people, and it does give us the sense that they are outnumbered. So option C is quite likely. Option D, the single healthcare worker versus the large number of public presents the idea that 1 healthcare worker is enough for multiple members of the public and that there is sufficient healthcare workers numbers to treat all those affected by the pandemic. So this is definitely not the case. We think that it appears that she is outnumbered and that she wouldn't be able to treat all 4 of these members of the public. So this is definitely not the case. And therefore the correct answer for question 4 is option C. Now, moving on to another cartoon. So again, if you want to take a moment to just pause the video, have a look at the cartoon, try to interpret it. So remember to pay attention to any text, any symbols, the colors, any facial expressions, and then have a go at answering question 5. So moving on to the solutions for question 5. So again, I'm going to take a moment and just have a look at the cartoon. So I see first of all there's some text. So I really didn't know what to think about the veil. Deep down I was very religious, but as a family we were very modern and avant-garde. So I know this is to do with religious symbols, it's to do with her own religion and her family's views. I then look at the picture and I see that there is a girl in focus in the very center, and she is divided down the middle in 2. And then in the background, there's one side with tools and objects. On the right side, there's sort of spiritual drawing. So I'm getting the sense that it's a conflicting opinion. So the fact that she has 2 sides in the middle means there are 2 sides and potentially some conflicting ideas. And her expression is quite expressionless. So now moving on to the actual question. So what is the author communicating through this cartoon piece? So option A, a certainty in her use of religious symbols. So that's the exact opposite to what we've just said. We get the feeling from the text and the fact that she is divided down the middle that she is not certain and she's actually having conflicting opinions about these. So we can rule out option A. Option B, an uncertainty about her beliefs in her religion. So uncertainty is definitely conveyed by the pictorial information, so the fact that it's divided into 2. But if we read the text, I really didn't know what to think about the veil. Deep down, I was very religious, but as a family, we were very modern and avant-garde. So the text helps us to know that actually she is certain about her beliefs in religion. There's uncertainty about wearing the veil. So option B is incorrect because she's not having any doubts about her belief in her religion. She specifically said, deep down, I was very religious. Moving on to option C. So an uncertainty about wearing religious symbols. So this is exactly how we've interpreted it. So we knew from the actual picture, there is some sense of uncertainty. And then from the text, we know exactly what she says. I really didn't know what to think about the veil. So this is to do with her religious symbol. So option C is looking very likely, but we'll just have a look at option D just to double check there's nothing better fitted. So D is a disparity between her religious beliefs and those of her family. So she says, but as a family, we were. So there's no sense that she is actually conflicting to her family's beliefs. It seems as though they share the exact same opinions. So therefore, option D is also not correct. And that leaves us with option C as the correct answer to question 5. So here's a common trap in the GAMSAT. So you need to interpret the text and images in a cartoon. So in question 5, the question we just did, the image being split into 2 suggested that there is uncertainty. However, you need to also look at the text to answer the question. So that's how we discovered that it was the wearing of her religious symbols and not her religious beliefs. So always pay attention to the text as well as the images. Moving on to question 6. Again, if you'd like to pause the video at this point and have a go at answering question 6. So question 6 asks, what is the most accurate meaning of avant-garde? So that is these words just here in the text on the cartoon. So you might already know what this word actually means, but if not, we can actually use the context of the cartoon to help us discover the meaning. So if we look at option A, unconventional. So this is a very likely answer. So she's talking about how she knew she was very religious, but that as a family, they're very modern and avant-garde. So if they're already modern, it's going to be something to do with this as well. And her problem is the veil, which is quite a traditional thing. So it's most likely going to be the opposite of traditional because she's conflicted between these 2 attitudes. So we're looking for the opposite of traditional. So unconventional is looking very likely. B, inexperienced. So there's nothing to suggest from this text or the cartoon that she is inexperienced, and that's how she would interpret her family to be. So we can rule out option B. C, traditional. So that's exactly what she's saying she and her family are the opposite of, because she's saying that she really didn't know what to think about the veil, which is the traditional aspect. She knew that they were religious, but as a family they were modern. So this word but is saying that they're not traditional. They're actually modern, and avant-garde is also going to be similar to modern and the opposite of traditional. So it's not going to be traditional. D, eccentric. So while she's saying that she's not traditional, she's not saying that she's eccentric in any way. She's just saying that her and her family are modern. So we can rule out D. And that makes option A the correct answer to question 6. Now moving on to question 7. So which of the following statements is the author most likely to agree with based on the cartoon? First of all, try to think about the author's actual attitude first before looking at the answer options. And again, pause the video and then play it again when you're ready for the solution. Okay, so now moving on to the solutions for question 7. So which of the following statements is the author most likely to agree with based on the cartoon? So A, there is an inability to be modern when wearing the veil. So whilst she is saying that there is a conflict between being modern and wearing the veil, she's not saying that there is an actual inability to be modern. She's not aiming as such to be modern, she just is modern. She's saying that her family were very modern and avant-garde, and she didn't know how to feel about wearing the veil. But she's not necessarily saying that there is an inability. So we can rule out option A. Option B, that being religious and being modern are in conflict with one another in the author's culture. So that's exactly what she's saying. So inability is too strong a word. She's just saying that they are in conflict. So at the moment, she knows that she's very religious, but she doesn't wish to actually wear her religious symbol. And this is in conflict with the author's culture. So option B is looking likely. Option C, it is not possible for a woman to have a career when she is wearing the traditional veil. So there's been nothing to do with careers and no mention of the limitations caused by wearing the veil. So we can rule out option C. Option D, a woman who is religious is unable to be modern. So that's not what she's saying. She is actually very religious. It's just simply this wearing of the religious symbol. And she is also saying that she's modern. So she's actually saying that she is religious and modern. So option D is not correct either. And therefore option B is the correct answer to question 7. Now, moving on to the final question in this tutorial, question 8. So again, if you'd like to pause the video and have a go at answering this question. Question 8 asks, based on the cartoon, what do you suspect is the purpose of the book it is taken from? So option A, describe the author's debate about religion and modern beliefs. So this kind of summarizes exactly what we've been talking about in the last few questions. There's confliction, which is also similar to a debate, and it's between religion and modern beliefs. So A is looking very likely. B, describe the author's journey back to religion. So there's nothing to suggest in this cartoon that she has lost her religion. She's only said that she knew that she was very religious and is just questioning the actual wearing of the religious symbols, but it has nothing to do with her beliefs. So option B is not likely. C, describe the author's journey away from religion. So just like in B, we've got no sense that the author has had any doubt in her actual beliefs or is planning on leaving her religion. It's just simply about wearing this veil. So we can rule out option C. Now, option D, describe the author's journey into engineering. So this completely misses the point. Although there are some tools and utensils over here, this is not to suggest at all that she's going into engineering. So we can rule out option D. And that makes option A the correct answer to question 8. So time for another GAMSAT top tip. So the imagery and positioning of symbols gives us further insight into the meaning of the cartoon. The split down the middle with the contrasting imagery suggests a conflict between the two. So the only answer option in question 8 that suggested contrast was answer choice A, and that was the correct answer. But also a note on the symbols, make sure not to get carried away. So obviously there is an answer option there for engineering, and whilst on the left hand side there is a hammer and some tools, this was not to suggest that she wanted to go into engineering. This was just to suggest modernity and the practicality of the modern day. So now for your take-home points. So firstly, make sure to interpret the verbal and pictorial information and think about the meaning and context of the poem. So definitely take a moment whenever you're presented with a cartoon to have a think about these and look at all of the things that we've been talking about. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and please feel free to leave any comments or questions.